Good morning, everybody. We're here to talk today a little bit about Dynamics 365 Field Service, and I got to admit, this is a new one for me. 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. Normally, they do these things for me right before happy hour. So it's me saying between you guys and beer. So this is very interesting for me, first thing in the morning. So we're going to do a session today around Dynamics 365 for Field Service, joined by Kyle Young, who's a Principal Program Manager from the R&D team, and Ken from PTC. We're gonna show some cool stuff today. This is an overview of field service. So we're not gonna go super deep. If you're expecting to see code level examples and all sorts of geeky code level stuff, probably not the session you wanna be in this morning. But we will go through what field service is, why you use it, what the use cases for it are, what the future holds for field service. So we're gonna start off talking about why field service, what's changed in the field service marketplace. We're going to turn it over to Kyle. Kyle's going to do some demos of overview of field service, the features, what's in it. We're going to do some demos along the way here. So we're going to be fairly heavily in demos today. So let's talk a little about overview of field service. Who here has seen this chart so many times they know it by heart? Anybody? All right, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this chart. For those of you who have not seen this chart before, Dynamics 365 Field Service is one of the modules or one of the composable workloads in our Dynamics 365 application suite. I would say a close cousin to it, by the way, is the PSA module. We're not going to get that today. But project service automation is a close cousin of field service. There's a lot of overlap there. And that's something that we won't talk about, but if you want to talk about it afterwards, find Kyle on the booth and beat us up. We'd love to talk about it. So really, why field service management? Why are we talking about this? What does field service management do? If your workforce is primarily mobile, meaning that your workforce does not spend time in an office, is not glued to a computer, they're mobile, this is what field service is for you. It's really about getting the right person at the right time in the right place. My favorite example of how not to do field service is, we had our dishwasher break. I called the company that sold us the dishwasher and said, get somebody out here to fix it. And they said, okay, great, we'll be there Tuesday between 8 in the morning and 6 at night. You want me to take a day off work to sit there and wait for my dishwasher all day long? And that's really how field service is done wrong. We want to talk about what field service is. These are really the areas where field service helps companies out. Those 5 areas are ones where companies are looking to improve, and this product helps in that improvement process. Part of that, though, is there's a change in business models. There's a change in what things. If you go back 20 years, or 10 years, or 15 years, field service solutions were always in ERP solutions. Anybody know why? Because they were a cost center. The CFO ran the cost center. What's happening now is field service is becoming outcome driven, and we have a service economy. So they're moving from cost centers to profit centers to as a service centers. And Dynamics 365 Field Service helps enable those new business models through some of these ways here. As we talk about digital transformation, things have changed. Used to be we sold products and services separately. Now what do? We sell them together as a package. Used to be we did it once and done. I bought one car, I sold it, I moved on. Now who here took an Uber or a Lyft to the convention center this morning? Okay? You didn't buy that car. You just used that car in the service for as long as you needed it for. Companies, employees, people do work. Now we have a more robust freelance workforce, if you will. So I'm not going to read these slides. You can download the slides afterwards. But what field service really does is it helps drive digital transformation in your company. If your company does 3 things, makes a product or service, services a product or service, or does internal asset management, field service really helps transform your business in some of these ways. Some of the big ones we see are moving from break fix, when something breaks, I'm going to call the customer, to predictive never fail. So we actually go out and do it before it actually breaks. Like the escalators last night, leaving the expo hall. How about a scheduled time-bound maintenance? I'm doing PMs every 3 months. Doing PMs based upon the amount of hours the machine has, or based upon some other things. So digital transformation is alive and well with field service, and we're here to help show you how some of those ways can be done. This is the last slide I've got before I kick it over to Kyle. We'll talk about field service workflow. This, for me, is interesting. I've been doing CRM for about 25 years. And I did a lot of work in field service in the early days, did some Salesforce automation, some customer service stuff. if you do Salesforce automation or customer service, every time you do a project, the customer treats that project like it's something unique and different. You can't take a trash company's process and put it in a financial services company and have it work. What's interesting about field service is this workflow we're showing you here, there's nuances. I'm not going to lie to you. There's nuances. But for the most part, this workflow of receive a job, schedule and dispatch, customer contact, perform the service, invoice for the service, is the same across almost every single solitary customer I've been into. Now, some drop some and some add some, but this is the same for about 95% of customers. So when you think about workflow for a field service perspective, this is the workflow that we get into. So with that, I'm going to flip it over to Kyle to talk about the field service features.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Ben. So Ben's done a good job of setting up the why of field service and the motivation behind the offering. So I'd like to just get a sampling here. Who here is familiar with the Dynamics field service solution? Level of familiarity? Okay, good. All right. Yeah, who here is an expert? All right. Well, if you're an expert, you don't get to ask questions because then you'll stump me and then, you know, that'll be embarrassing. So, all right, let's take a look at the features then. So I'm going to go through just some of the, highlight some of the features that we have in the product, and we'll have these in the slides, and you can go back and look at them. I won't end up showing all of these in detail, but wanted to make sure that you have familiarity with basically the depth and the breadth of the product. So the first area has to do with contract management and pre-sales. So one of the key functionalities that we heard initially from customers as we were bringing this solution aboard was that you need to take into account just the full life cycle of the relationship with the customer, including the upfront work. And so we've enabled opportunity and quote so that they become now field service aware, and they understand a field service agreement, and you can create a quote based on a field service agreement and so forth. And then it's also very important, there's a lot of reoccurring work that happens when you talk about field service. And so we actually have an entity called agreement that has that capability. I'll show that in a few moments. And you'll see the fact that you have the ability to do reoccurring work and schedule reoccurring work and so forth. And so just, yeah, that's kind of the first layer, the fact that we're going to go pursue the business, win the business, and be able to be set up for an ongoing business relationship. We also have, as well as the upfront pre-sales, we also have extended order so that it is now aware of field service capability. So you can actually have basically a representation of the contract that understands field service and understands the life of that relationship in a field service scenario. Key to the field service, and this is the area that we tend to talk about most and we probably spend most of our time on, has to do with schedule and dispatch. And I'll show that in a little bit, fair amount of depth in the demo. But basically, how do you balance out the workloads? How do you find the right technician? How do you optimize resources? And this goes from very manual processes, depending on what your business process is, up through actually optimized and automated scheduling. And I'll show you what those things look like. Field service isn't complete without understanding all the moving parts, literally. And so when you think about various field service scenarios, there are lots of things that field service technicians are going to need, whether it be parts or supplies or so forth. And so having the basic inventory management functionality is key to that solution. And so that all comes along with the field service solution. The ability to understand the various places where those parts live and where they're committed and what's on order and so forth. That can be a physical stationary location. That can be a van, so it can represent van stock. Ben and I were talking yesterday, it can also be a customer location. There are some field service scenarios in which the service organization maintains a set of parts at a customer location because they're frequently servicing that location. And so the ability to track that inventory across locations is a key part of the solution. Another key part of that solution is understanding when parts are consumed, and I'll show you how that works when we get to the mobile side of things. Speaking of mobile, you can't really talk about a field service solution without having significant mobile story and mobile investments. And this is a significant investment area for us. We'll show you where we're at today, and then also talk about, we'll see some of the nice investments we're making towards the future. As Ben pointed out, this is very highly a mobile workforce, and so having the mobile solution is a key part of this. And it's going beyond simply knowing where I need to be and when, and it's going to go, we're going to get even more advanced than that, starting to help the technician to anticipate issues they might have, or parts that they may need, even beyond just the standard type of work that they're doing, all the way to starting to figure out how to fill the skill gap and so forth with the technician workforce. So we'll take a look at a few of those things as we get into the demo scenarios. And then ultimately, Ben teed this up nicely, but the point of one of the whole goals of doing and being effective at field service is that life cycle and lifetime customer relationship. Ben pointed that out, that it's no longer just a cost center that's just this thing that we have to do, but it's an important part of the customer engagement. And so having capabilities like enabling the portal functionality of Dynamics 365 so customers have a view of things, optimizing the right outbound communications. So we have, for example, a sample solution that can be configured to work with the Twilio service for doing outbound text, for example, and that becomes increasingly an important means of communication. It's just an example of different ways that the field service solution can tie in to your customer engagement story. And then even technician visibility. So we've partnered with Glimpse Service, for example, and so that's a means by which a company can inform their end users, whether they be residential or commercial or whatever, of where their technician is at. The user can track the technician, see what their ETA is, and get away from Ben's dishwasher scenario. So he's not camped out all day. He'll get a text saying, okay, here's when your technician should be there, and then a text that follows up that says, hey, your technician's on their way. By the way, if you click here, you can actually see a map of where they're at, and you can know what their actual current location is and their ETA. And so we see that as a key piece of this, the customer engagement piece of things. All right, so I'll drill now into, just drill into the product, and we'll take a look at some of the features in depth. Okay, now here we go. So this is who here has seen this part of the product? Who here has seen schedule board and so forth? Okay, some familiarity. All right. So this is what we refer to as the schedule board, and it's kind of the canonical area that you think of when you think about field service. And I'm going to break it down in kind of its constituent parts. I'll come back to that in just a second. But I want to first of all drill into the basics of a work order. So on the schedule board here, you see a technician. And for the technician, you can see different things like their skills and the roles that they play and so forth, have some contact info and so forth. So it's very easy to hover over here and get some data on the technician. And basically what we have here is we have a day in the life of each technician, and we have these arranged in here of what we refer to as bookings. And so basically this is a work order that's been assigned to certain resources that constitute a booking. I want to drill down into a work order, for example. That is the basic unit of work, the typical means by which you assign work and so forth in a field service solution. So when we take a look at a work order, there are some key things that comprise a work order. I want to scroll down a little bit. There's a lot of the basic information, including timing of when they should be there and so forth, what the promise windows are, and etc. But there's some key things that are kind of a reoccurring pattern. And so the first one is a set of tasks. So if you're going to send out a technician or anyone dispatch to do things, it's very likely that you're going to give them a set of tasks in a certain order, and there may even be a targeted duration for those tasks, and you also want to track that those tasks are complete. Another aspect of this is this set of products. So what parts am I going to need to take with me to accomplish this work order? And also the set of services. And these are the items that we'll check off, and this will drive the invoicing and billing, saying, okay, these are the services that were performed. Now, you could go put these on each work order. You could create a work order each time, and you could put these on here. But it's much more effective to have some sort of standardization of work. And so part of the product is what we refer to as incident type. An incident type is a way of standardizing work. And so when a request comes in, regardless of how that request is received, you can identify it by a type of work. And so the type of work, the incident type, will indicate the skills or the characteristics that are needed. So here's how you're going to match it to the technicians. It also indicates the duration, and that duration can be derived from the set of service tasks that you define in the right order and the set of products and services and so forth. So you can see where that pattern comes from for a work order. So having this incident type is a very powerful tool, because then you can have, based on your historical experience, standardize the set of work and then use those incident types to drive what constitutes a work order. And on a work order, you can have one or more incident types. So basically, when a work order is created, it also has factors like location and other information that go with that. And then what happens is, behind the scenes, we create, or the product creates, what we refer to as a resource requirement. So a resource requirement basically says, okay, here's everything that I need to know to be able to match a resource to do this work. And so it will indicate the set of skills, the duration, the location, and so forth, and other considerations that need to be done. And so resource requirements are basically your demand. So on this below here, you've got a set of work orders that haven't been scheduled yet, and this represents the set of demand. And then capacity is represented by, I'll just resize this here, capacity is represented by the set of resources and their calendars and their skill sets. So here's a resource. You can see what the resource's skills are, and based on their calendar, and these are individual calendars, it can vary every day for every resource, or you can use different patterns, but it establishes how much capacity each resource has during the day. It also has and understands a starting and ending location for the resource and so forth, so that then you have this picture of here's what my capacity looks like, here's what my demand looks like, and then there's this process of doing the matching between capacity and demand. So another aspect of this that I wanted to pop out are the filters and the mapping functionality. We'll take a look at a filter in a moment. But let me just hide this panel away. So one of the key things as the dispatcher is, as I have, I've previously done this schedule, now I have my capacity and demand mapped together, and so these all show up together on the schedule board, which is great. But how do I know what the moving parts are and where everybody's going and so forth? So these are the starting locations for the resources for the day. You can see those here in color. But if I start to zoom in, what I'll now see is the actual routes for the day for each resource. Now it's kind of busy if I have them all turned on, but I'll just start turning on a couple of them here. And there we go. And so here's, you can turn on Brady. You can see what Brady's route for the day is. We can turn on David and see what David's route looks like, and then on down the list, and we can start to take a look here. Oops, I need to move this down a little bit. Start to take a look, and you can see what the routes are for the various resources. There's also a feature that if you enable it, you can actually see what the real-time location is based on the activity of the mobile application. It picks up geolocations. It'll actually show up here on the map as well. So the map gives you a pretty good idea of what the routes look like and where everybody's headed for the day. So if something goes wrong, and it inevitably will, you can kind of get an idea of where's everybody at, what's going on, and so forth. You can also see, for another feature here, is to be able to see the resource requirements that are unfilled. And so here on the map are unfilled resource requirements. And so as a dispatcher, you can actually use this view to do bookings. And so, for example, you could drag this over and say, okay, this guy is pretty close to this pin. I could drag that over and I could create a booking and add that to the daily schedule. That would just be one example. I'll just okay, leave that there for now. But that's just another part of the view that is available, is to see what those unfilled requirements are. So let's go back to those unfilled requirements. Let's say I want to do some bookings, and I have a number of different options. And so one option that I have is I can simply take bookings from this location. I can just grab those and drag them and drop them. And so if I have a pretty good idea of the resource I want to match, I can drag them and drop them, and I can get some feedback as I go, and get some, get a little bit of notification or alerts there saying, okay, this may be a good match or may not be. So there's this manual process that I can use. A lot of times we want to help the dispatcher a little bit more than that. So what we'll say is, okay, I'm going to use what we refer to as the schedule assistant. And the schedule assistant, when I click this, what it's going to do is go to the resource requirement. It's going to apply a set of filters based on that resource requirement. And so over here on this left panel, you can see what the filters are. You can see that I've got a radius set, and I've got a start and an end time, and I've got a characteristic that for the skill that's needed. And so now I can, it actually is going to show me some matches. In this case, it looks like there's at least one match. And so here's one of the resources that actually matches what that resource requirement is. And I can see what time frame they're available. And so if I wanted to, I could just simply grab this and book that. And if there were more time slots available, or if I was searching across a larger set of days, I would find times tomorrow and possibly next day and so forth. So we go from purely manual, which is drag and drop, to an assisted scheduling capability with the schedule assistant functionality. But let's say that we actually want to have the system do more for us. And that's where we refer to it as resource scheduling optimization. That's where RSO comes in. And so what RSO does is you basically give it a set of scope. In other words, and so what scope defines is, here's the set of demand, and here's the set of resources to which I want to apply. And typically it's bounded by some geography like a territory or some other subsetting like a product line or something like that. And so you basically group a set of demand and a set of resources and their relative capacity and skills, and you feed that into the engine, the optimizing engine. And you give it some goals, and you ask it, for example, you can say, all right, I have the following constraints. I want you to schedule it within working hours, and the other one that I have here is to match the skills. So I want you to do skill matching and schedule it within working hours. You can also do things like respecting certain lock options. Like you can lock a certain job to a certain work order to a given technician, and you can move it around time-wise. Or you can say this time slot, it needs to happen in this time slot, but it could happen with other technicians. That's another locking. Or you could lock both and say, actually, don't touch this one. This one, just leave it alone. It's in the right place with the right person. Work around it, but don't move it. And so you can set different characteristics like that, as well as setting different objectives, like focusing on high priority requirements, or maximizing working hours and so forth. And so once you feed that into the optimizer, then you can give that optimizer a schedule, and it can run on whatever schedule makes sense. And so some organizations, they have kind of a day-wise approach. They run it late night for the next day, and then they do kind of tweaking during the day. Other organizations, it's much more dynamic, and so they see requirements changing during the day, and it takes into account things like technicians running long and so forth, and they actually run the optimizer frequently during the day. And so you can have different options there to take advantage of the optimizer. And so when the optimizer runs, for purposes of expediency, I've actually already run that for today. And what happens is, the work orders that you saw here, or the bookings here on the top of the schedule board, just for demo purposes, I've set those up to be manually scheduled or scheduled using the schedule assistant. But further down this bottom half of the schedule board, these were all placed here by the optimizer, by RSO. And so what you can see here is that it's done a nice job of compactly putting those in here. On this schedule board, these are the travel times that are represented here. And so what it does is it takes the possible combinations of jobs and it calls out to maps, a mapping function, and it says, okay, what would be the travel time, turn-by-turn direction, what would be the travel time between each of these combinations of locations? And then it has all of that data as well as the skills and the requirements and so forth. Then it does the optimization based on that. It reaches some condition, then when it stops and says, okay, I've reached optimal solution, and now then it will just write back this schedule of set of bookings back into the schedule, and you can view those on the schedule board. And so that's the result of having run the optimizer, and in this case I ran it out for another couple of days, and so you can see today's schedule and tomorrow's schedule and so forth, again all with their travel times, and assuring now I know that all of these meet the right skill, they're minimizing the amount of travel time, maximizing working hours and so forth. So that gives an idea of kind of the continuum of scheduling options. So very quickly, that's kind of a quick pass through the scheduling functionality. I wanted to show one more capability. I mentioned it up front, which was the agreement functionality. So if we take a look at agreement, this gives me the ability to set up a schedule. And so in this case, I have a setup here that has monthly maintenance. And what this will do is based on this schedule, it will use a certain incident type like standard inspection, and it will do it based on a level of recurrence. And so, not unlike an Outlook calendar for a recurring meeting and so forth, we have a set of options for actually generating work orders in advance based on this pattern that is required by the customer. And so this is a way to be able to have a reoccurring and driven set of resource requirements or work orders based on what the customer has set up as part of their requirement. And again, this all matches up to the contract you set up front with the customer, but a recurring way of actually setting that up and executing on that. So with that, we will consider that a quick lap through the basics of the field service solution, and we will then, we want to jump back into, now start to jump into some of the more advanced scenarios. So, all right, and so as we get into the world of Internet of Things or IoT, one of the opportunities we have, and Ben teed this up nicely, is to point out that we can actually change the nature of services. So this reactive model that we've all become used to can now change to become a much more prescriptive model. And we are going to be able to leverage various capabilities in doing that. Part of the functionality is going to be the Dynamics 365 solution for field service, as well as, for example, the Azure solution, the Azure IoT suite. And so the goal here is to move us into reducing downtime, reducing maintenance, and also armed with the IoT data, the technicians can be that much more effective. And so what we've done, we started first of all with the field service solution as we know it today, and we then took a look at what the Azure IoT suite looks like. We took there's a wealth of rich capability in the IoT suite, and we said, okay, what if we were to marry those together and connect those up? And so on the IoT suite side of things, you have the ability to connect to a large number of devices, be able to process an insane amount of information and messages coming from those devices, and then do smart things like leverage stream analytics to identify things that need action and so forth. And that's where IoT Suite fits in. But then on the Dynamics 365 side, the power now is to say, okay, given a set of information and given the rules that I have and things that have been identified over on the IoT Suite side of things, I now am positioned to take action. And so based on messages that come in, I can actually take manual action, like it might create a case, for example, that says, okay, somebody needs to look into this based on this message that we received. Or even more automated action, like automatically creating a work order and scheduling a work order. And so there's a whole range of options that you have over on the Dynamics 365 side of it. Now, today we're going to show you how this all comes together. And I really want to highlight and thank our partner PTC for all of their efforts, and you're going to get to know a little bit more about them in a second. But I wanted to show you where they fit in. So on the lower right here, we have ThingWorx, which is the PTC suite of solutions. And they are experts and have been serving for many years the manufacturing engineering spaces. The reason that's important is because in order to have this end-to-end view of what's happening with the devices, it's helpful to understand the engineering behind the device, the service patterns that have existed for that device, the manufacturing aspects of the device, for example. And so you'll see how ThingWorx, coupled with Dynamics 365, adds a ton of value. You're going to see that in the demo. And I want to go over to the top, top left. And the other thing you'll notice is that for technicians, we are actually making a series of investments, and we foresee a future in which we can do much more to assist the technician. And so notice that we have mixed reality there, and you see the icon for HoloLens. And so we're actually going to show how HoloLens, for example, fits into this scenario. And here again, this is where PTC brings a ton of value, because based on the engineering the engineering information, they're able to, and service information, they're able to create experiences, and including 3D immersive HoloLens experiences that are actually going to guide the technician to do a repair. One of the challenges that happens in the technician space is you hear our customers talk about things like aging workforce and skill gaps. Repairs are getting more complex. There's more demand for repairs, more demand for different skills. And so part of this investment that we're making is how do we augment the existing skill sets? How do we allow a more junior technician to perform a more senior repair and so forth? So those are some of the investment areas that we're making, and that's what you're going to see here in a moment as we kick off this demo. But first I want to turn the time over to Ken, who's going to talk to us a little bit about PTC and give us some background there.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Kyle. All right, I'm Ken Rawlings. I'm on the product management team at PTC, and we've been here all week working with the Microsoft team. We've been presenting down in the HoloLens area some of this technology. So thanks to the PTC team that helped put this demo together. What we really want to show you in that end-to-end scenario Kyle just talked about is really how we can deliver value to really multiply field service. A little bit about PTC. We're headquartered in Boston. We're around for about 30 years. We were the leaders in revolutionized digital 3D CAD. So when you think about mixed reality and you think about some of these experiences that you're going to be producing and enabling the field technician, what we're doing is really taking that existing CAD model and that existing 3D content that you have and putting it to work for you in these experiences, but also coupling it with other engineering and manufacturing information that you might have from if you're a product manufacturer in terms of how you produce those products. So a lot of our focus over the past several years has been on investments in really enabling IoT and mixed reality to really deliver on that end-to-end scenario that Kyle just depicted. The way we look at things is there's a huge convergence going on, a yin and yang between the physical and digital worlds. And the first step in that is really what has been enabled by IoT. So by making the things in the world and the products in the world able to produce digital representations of their operational characteristics, the data that's streaming off those devices, bringing that in and giving you the digital representation of what's going on with that physical thing, and then taking the next step and producing a mixed reality experience that shows you that thing in context of not only the data streaming off it, but also giving you, in essence, a heads-up display on anything. So what we'll be introducing to you in a second is this device I have sitting on the stage here that we constructed. As we go through this, I want you to think of this as, if you're a product manufacturer, as any typical product that you would deliver to your customers and service. In this case, we've constructed a motor, but we'll go through how by pulling data from all these disparate sources and being able to serve it into this use case, you can provide immense value as you take mixed reality and IoT and combine it in a field service use case. So our expertise at PTC, spans engineering, manufacturing, and service, as Kyle touched on. So a lot of that engineering information, things that were brought from the CAD system or the product lifecycle management system, being able to provide that bill of materials data, that maybe that manufacturing bill of materials into your service bill of materials, and we'll show you that in the demo and how you can serve that up to a field technician. That's very powerful in combining that with the mixed reality experience. So what we'll be demonstrating today as part of this technology, as I mentioned, we have this this motor on stage with us. It's the fourth actor in our play. It has a couple key components that we've built in to allow us to stream the data. Kyle touched on the Azure IoT connectivity. We have an Allen Bradley PLC that we're actually streaming data from into Azure IoT, and you'll see some of that data live as part of the demo. There's a motor controller, and some of that data is being captured through the motor controller. We have some solenoids that we'll be able to hit to show some different performance characteristics as that motor is operating. And there's some environmental sensors that you'd be capturing and streaming into Azure IoT that might be applicable to the field technician as well. The way we've created the mixed reality experience is using our technology called ThingWorx Studio. As I mentioned, we're demonstrating that down on the show floor in the HoloLens booth. And what ThingWorx Studio allows you to do is, in essence, create the mixed reality experience that you'll see in a minute here in a matter of minutes. Just by importing files that you already have from your CAD structures and defining the different animations and sequences that you want in these type of field service technician experiences, that's what's really going to deliver the value. So you don't have to hire a team of programmers to develop this content in Unity or other tools. What ThingWorx Studio really allows you to do is do that in a drag and drop interface that a business user can create. And we rapidly just delivered, going back earlier this summer, a solution that works with HoloLens, so you can create mixed reality experiences running on HoloLens today in production. And we have an ongoing free trial program where you can download this and try this at your leisure. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Kyle, and he's going to walk you through the end-to-end demo we have on this motor.
A few things we saw here. One is all the data coming in out of IoT Hub. Has anybody ever seen Play the Stream Analytics or IoT Hub? Anybody yet? Okay, so I liken that to a fire hose. You got all this data coming through. What you really want in the field service solution is just the exceptions, just the anomalies. So what we do with the Azure IoT Hub connection that Kyle and Ken both talked about is we just grab those exceptions and anomalies and pull them in Dynamics 365 Field Service as the exceptions and anomalies, and then we use Dynamics Workflow to take those anomalies and then turn them into action for the actual dispatcher and or the technician. So here I am, I'm back at almost the exact same place Kyle was. I'm back on my schedule board. You're going to see here's my ticket, work order number 52. Please Wi-Fi work, please Wi-Fi work. I can breathe again. So what we're doing now is we're actually going to pull up the data from this. So this is my actual work order. It's my technician's actually going to see on their mobile device. I'm doing it as a dispatcher here for ease of use. I think one of the next demos we're going to show is Kyle showing it on a mobile device a little bit later. So you can see here's the same stuff that we saw earlier. But you notice on the right-hand side, we actually have data being pulled both out of IoT Hub as well as ThingWorx and displayed for the technician in real time. So here, for example, based upon the information we had coming in out of IoT Hub, we've made a prediction that the motor mount is probably bad. So we're using that IoT Hub data coming in to make a prediction, and then we're using Dynamics 365 as the action box to actually then go out and actually dispatch a technician to actually go out and do some work on it. So here's all my different areas of this. I can see all the things I'm doing here. Now, if I want to look at the customer asset, so again, I'm here in the office. What's going on with that asset? Where are we with this? What does this asset look like? Click on the asset here. So I've basically gone from the data coming in from IoT Hub to creating a work order. Now I'm looking at what the asset is. So I can see here, here's my asset. Well, it was a blue pump, but I see all the sub-assets associated with this, all those pieces that Ken pointed out earlier. I have a place for all of those, what the status of those are in IoT Hub. And as I scroll down here, I'm actually able to see real-time and near real-time data coming off of the data those devices are putting in the Azure IoT Hub to see what's actually going on with that device before I do it. Now, depending on what the company you are, one of two things happens here. Either one is we don't actually create a work order to begin with. We create a case. The average cost for call center technicians is about what? How much does it take to put a person in a chair in a call center? Anybody want to guess what that dollar figure is? It's actually about $25 an hour. Anybody want to guess what it costs to roll a tech out to a job site? About $100 an hour. So if I can do it in the call center before I send a tech out, I'm saving myself $75 an hour in time. So we can use this data to have somebody in the office make sure that this is a good, valid use case for dispatching a tech before I actually dispatch the tech, based upon the data coming in from IoT Hub. So there is two ways we can see it, so both the work order as well as the data coming back in. Now, we're going to show the technician view. So I'm now finished from a dispatch point of view. Kyle's going to play the part of a technician now, actually going out to fix that piece of equipment.
All right, thanks, Ben. Now, the reason I'm playing the role of technician is to prove the point that we can actually make progress with the lowest possible skill set, the technician. All right, now we're giving away free hollow.
Should I be doing that then?
Well, we'll see. We'll see. We'll let the audience vote. You know, it's like American Idol, right? And there will be free. We'll hand out free HoloLenses to those who laugh at the jokes from this point forward. There we go. Now we got it going. All right. Yeah, we're going to give you a break at 9 o'clock, but now we're rolling into that next hour. Okay, so I'm going to show you something that we have. It's a work in process. It's on our roadmap, but we want to get smarter about how we can help the technicians. And so we want to leverage intelligence like Cortana. And we're going to actually take advantage of Cortana's skills. And so I've got Cortana up here, and she's just dying. She's been waiting all morning to give me some help on something. She's offered all kinds of ways that she can help. She's trying to get me to leave town. Unfortunately for you, I didn't do it early enough. But you can see here that she's really excited to help. So let's put her to the test. So let's first of all say, ask field service assistant.
Tell me, how can I help?
Okay, so what we've got here is we've got a Cortana skill that is based on, we call it Field Service Assistant. Now, I've already connected up to this same organization that Ben, this online org that Ben was using, and showing you the work order. And so what's happening here is I've connected up, and then I have a bunch of options here. And so she can help me. I can ask her to find directions to the next site. We can check the status of a booking, find out what my notes are, parts, and so forth. So you can see, and we'll make this available, and then it'll be extensible so that you can add other things into the skill and so forth based on your business process. And so that's one channel. Now, with these skills, not only will it work in Cortana, notice that I'm using this on an iPhone device. So this is Cortana on iPhone, and it'll work, on Android, iPhone, Windows devices. But I also, Skype is another channel for these skills. And so in this case, I just wanted to show you too that this would actually work on Skype. And so I just gave Skype the little command to get directions. And you can see that using that same skill, it pulled up what my next work order is, and I can actually get directions from it. I would hit click here to get directions, but it's in Bellevue, and so it would take me a mere 4 days of travel time to be able to respond to the customer. So it's probably not going to be too impressive. But I can even, even with even with Skype, and I can actually use voice functions as well. So I could just say get directions, and Skype will pick that up if I press the button before I keep talking. And so anyway, it'll go off and it'll execute that skill that way. So that's some things that we're investing in because we want to help the technician as much as we can. We're also looking at predictive things like, hey, it looks like you're traveling. Do you want to, it looks like you left. Do you want us to change status to traveling? Or it looks like you've arrived. Do you want to change status to in progress? And other things like that, leveraging geofencing and so forth. So we need to do a lot to help out our technicians, especially the low-skill technicians like myself. Okay, but let's go a little further. So let's go to the actual mobile application. So this is the mobile application that goes with the solution. And see if I can switch to that more cleanly this time. There we go. It's much better when it's less fuzzy. All right, so this is the mobile application that goes with the field service solution. And so you can see that it's got the kind of information that I need as a technician. I've got accounts and contacts and so forth. But really the most relevant thing here is to look at bookings. So I can take a look at my booking, and here's that number, that job 52 that Ben talked about that was created based on the IoT alert and so forth. And I can see all the key information for it. I can see a map, and here's a map. I can even hit the directions button. It'll kick off the directions functionality of the device, and I think this will direct us, from here over to the Hilton. I think that's where this job is based. And I can see the list of service tasks that I need to perform, and for each of those I can easily click them off and say, yep, these are completed. I can also see the products that I need or the parts that I need, as well as mark them off that I have completed, that I've consumed those parts. Like if I end up using more parts, or in my case, if I break one, I can indicate that I used 3 of them to replace one, that kind of thing. And so, so management will know what the overall cost of sending me out to do a job is. And so then all the way down to, and like in the case if I actually correctly finish a job as a technician now, I can actually get the customer signature and prove that I actually finished that. My bosses may not believe it, but I'll have proof that the customer actually signed off on it. So anyway, that gives you a set of context, going from bots and skills and so forth to the field service mobile solution. But let's say that we want to go further and help the technician even more and do more for them. So that's where we're going to bring in mixed reality. So I'm going to put on a HoloLens. In this case, just for your full information, I basically have it on here just for reference. We're actually going to use the HoloLens that's mounted here to be able to see the details. All right, so let's take a look at what we've got going on here. Okay, so we have, you see now we've got a visual image of the actual motor, but on top of that we have interposed a graphics, 3D image of what that motor looks like, and it's going to give us a bunch of information as we work with it. And so the first thing we want to do is take a look at, we're going to see some of the data. So what the technician will see in their headset here is the fact that I have IoT data coming in that I can see in context. And so if I was just looking at the motor with my bare eyes, I wouldn't see those readings. But with the mixed reality capabilities of HoloLens, I'm actually going to see those. Now, if this were just me doing this on my own, I would just start futzing around with it, kind of run it and watch it. So let's just do a little bit of that. All right, so we're going to turn the motor on, and you can hear it actually running. And if I were a technician, I may want to do some tests. Like I might want to say, okay, let's put this motor under load and then see what happens. So I can hit load number 1, and let's see what happens here. Notice if you see the readings here, notice in the headset, what the technician is now seeing are these values. You can see the values coming through IoT in context of the headset, right, interposed on top of the motor as I'm trying to work with it. Now that's something I would never be able to get if I was just futzing around with the motor by itself, but in context, I can actually see that. Now let's say that I want to actually go ahead and do the repair. Now, just, you know, an unlearned technician like me, I would probably just start like this, but since it's noisy, I'll actually shut it off. There we go. So I've heard it's useful to shut it off before we do the repair. So we'll try that. So now we've shut off the motor, but I'm still not sure exactly what it is I should be doing as a technician. So I'm going to come over here and take a look at it. And let's just see if I can get more help with this mixed reality experience. Oh, okay. So the next thing I get is this information in context. We mentioned earlier, both Ken and Ben pointed out that we basically have PLM, or Product Lifecycle Management information, that comes from the ThingWorx platform. And so in this case, I know exactly which part I need. And again, I don't have to go external, you know, it's back over to my other app or whatever. I can see all of this in context. And by the way, I can also see that, you know, the Field Service mobile app that I showed you earlier on my phone device, it also runs on HoloLens as well. So I could look up more information from that app as well. But here's the part, and so this is PLM information right here in context. That's helpful. Now let's say I've got the part and I have, you know, I've got the one that I need, but I want to actually do the repair. Okay, so here we go. We're going to now see a 3D animation of the repair itself. And so I actually know what to do in order. And so you can see that that animation is exactly on top of the actual part itself. You see, there we go. The animation is coming out. I would know actually how to take that part out. And once I've got the replacement, or I've done the repair that I need, I put it back, making sure that I do it in the right order. There you go. You can see that it goes back. All right. And that's the completed repair. And so the other thing is, now let's say I want to run it and watch it again. And I do that. I can turn it on, put it under load, and I can see what happens now and confirm that I've actually done the repair correctly. So you can see the power of having the contextual information that we have in Dynamics 365, and then the information that we have from the device coming through IoT channels, coupled with the service and engineering information that PTC makes available, the PLM information, and the value of having the 3D animation. So, what do you think? All right. All right. So huge thanks to our friends from PTC for bringing all these critical pieces together to make this possible. So with that, we will conclude. This is the demo that happens around the motor and explains how that process works. Ben is going to talk to us about some other IoT scenarios. Let's see, 7. Yeah. Oh, deck. Yeah, good point. Deck. Yeah, 5. There we go. All right.
So we're going to talk about some additional IoT scenarios. IoT, I think, is the most overused buzzword of the past 2 years. But just to kind of give you an idea, we work with lots of different IoT systems, IoT vendors. If it connects into IoT Hub, we connect into it. We're going to show you one additional IoT scenario. So just kind of think of IoT, everything from the very small things up through big MRI machines. Think of those as all being IoT enabled. My personal favorite is, we're going to show you some IoT enablement here around something we get requests for all the time, and actually feeds back into what Kyle talked about earlier as far as technician location. So here's some IoT vendors. We work with a bunch of them. We're going to actually show you a demo now of 7, right?
7.
One of the things we see a lot is, I'm a self-confessed gearhead. I love my cars, okay? This is a demo of a telematics solution made by a company out of Canada called Geotab. So here is Geotab, the Geotab Drive app. You can see, for example, how much time, just so you guys know, these are my vehicles, or actually my wife's vehicle, my sister-in-law's vehicle, that they allowed me so nicely to put sensors in. So you can see, for example, the Jeep Wrangler, it spent a lot of time driving the past week after business hours, okay? my sister-in-law's, you can see that my Lexus spends a lot of time speeding. I'll let you be the judge of why that is in a whole other conversation. You can see how much time we spend idling our cars. Okay, I'm going to look at the vehicles now. So here, Lexus or Jeep? Which one, guys? Lexus. Okay, so here's all the data about the Lexus. So again, we're pulling the data in from the Lexus, so you see the VIN number, everything else here. I'm going to click View on Map, and that Lexus is currently sitting at the condo we rented for the week. So there's my wife's Lexus. If I click on the little mark here, I can view the trip. Now I'm going to ask you guys, can you guess when my wife was driving versus can you guess when I started driving about last night? So, okay, so let's look at the trip. And she got, she sped for 37 seconds. Oh, there's the trip we went on, 54 seconds. And then last night on the way home, can anybody guess who that was? Me, yeah, exactly, that was me. You can see here I sped for 1 minute and 37 seconds. It'll actually tell me where I sped, what road I sped, and how fast I was speeding. Okay? Now that's pretty cool stuff, right? The fact you can actually see all that data. But that doesn't actually do anything for anybody, right? What we actually do now is we take that data now, we now drop that off into Dynamics 365. So remember before we talked about all that data coming through? I defined in GeoTab all the exceptions I wanted to be raised in Dynamics 365. So Kyle may not care that I speed. Well, then you may. Or you may not care that I put my seatbelt on or not. So you define those rules in Azure IoT Hub. You define those rules in your IoT system. And I can now see, here's a list of all of, so you see last night at 10:56, there's an engine speed warning because I was revving the engine to max capacity last night. Forward braking or acceleration. That was me too. So you can see, for example, all of the different areas, what I've done, and these then get dropped off in Dynamics 365, complete with the latitude and longitude data. So I know exactly where I was speeding at, or braking hard, or the check engine light came on. Where we see this use a lot in fleets are, the drivers don't really care about the vehicle. Why not? Because it's not theirs. Okay? The joke I tell people is my sister-in-law drives around with a Jeep with a check engine light all the time. I'm like, how long's it been on? A couple weeks. Did you call me? No. So now she knows I can go back, and I actually have an alert in Dynamics 365 that texts me when a check engine light comes on, so I know. You can do that with these additional IoT scenarios. So when you think about IoT, don't necessarily think about huge, complex, big things sometimes. Sometimes just taking everything we use and operate on and putting them into Dynamics 365 as actionable intelligence. So with that, Kyle, you want to talk about what's coming up?
Sounds good. Okay. Just as a quick caution, we don't necessarily recommend using IoT to strengthen marriage relationships. So I just wanted to be really clear about that. So I don't want to hear about it in the future. Okay. All right. So a little bit about what we've got going on. We're within the next. We're days away now, or weeks away from releasing our latest release of the update to Dynamics 365 altogether, and the field service solution in particular as well. So just some things to look for. We've done a lot of work around scheduling and schedule board and so forth. The big one is extensibility. We hear increasing feedback about wanting to be able to customize the filters and do ratings or do sorting or filtering based on extensible new entities or new fields or so forth. And so you might have seen that in the what we used to call the airlift or the exec briefing. But anyway, that will be coming. You'll be able to get your hands on it fairly soon, as well as doing things, productivity things like being able to substitute a resource. Hey, I have this technician on the schedule board. I've got a picture of this, and I need to find a substitute. Something's gone wrong, or that he's not going to show up, or whatever. And so they figured out it was me that was assigned, whatever it is. And so you need to find a substitute. You can just click the substitute resource, and it'll basically set the filter as that same conditions that were for the original booking, and then you can find an alternative resource or resources for the booking. So those are some enhancements on the scheduling side of it. When we get to resource scheduling optimization, this is a large roadmap item for us. We will continue to invest in RSO for the foreseeable future. We've been partnering with Microsoft Research for about the last year and a half, with some really brainy guys in operations research there who've helped us to basically work and define the next generation architecture for RSO, be able to eventually get to more extensibility, richer rule set, pulling in additional, being able to action on additional data that are custom entities or custom fields and so forth. So there's a lot going on there. We will continue to invest. We're going to continue to try and update on a regular basis. We're going to do monthly or every other monthly releases, continue on that pattern and that rhythm. What we've done this release, you'll notice some really nice advancements. One of the things we've done is integration with Schedule Board. And so you basically have the ability to see what different RSO scope and runs look like, and you can do it in context of the Schedule Board. So you can see jobs that that have been put on the Schedule Board based on RSO, why they were put there, and so forth. You see on the bottom panel things like jobs that were eligible for optimization, requirements that were excluded from optimization, a lot of visibility that we don't have today. And as you work on it, you can actually see that visualization here and actually do run now right from the Schedule Board. So you can do that tweaking, set a schedule, and so forth, run now right from the Schedule Board. So anyway, my explanation probably doesn't do it justice, but it's a significant investment for us. We've also done a bunch of work around deployment and some error handling and so forth, so the deployment should be improved as well. And then kind of this last area I wanted to highlight a couple of things. One is for connected field service, we now allow bring your own resources. Azure resources. Now the way that CFS deploys today is that you bring your own Azure subscription, but then it wants to set up all of the resources. It wants to set up an IoT hub and the stream analytics jobs and the logic apps and so forth, and the database for the BI feed and all of that. But let's say that you already have an IoT hub, and so what you may want to use an existing IoT hub, and so you basically say, fine, use the existing IoT hub, but maybe have it set up the logic app so that and the stream analytics job so that you've got what you need to talk back and forth to Dynamics. And so now you have flexibility around that, so you can pick and choose existing resources versus resources that the deployment experience will create. So that we think that's a nice way of doing that. And then the last thing here is, and I encourage you to follow this link or go out and search for it, we released a Power BI solution template for field service. So now you've got a rich set of data that is coming from the operational side of field service, flowing through the data extraction service functionality in base Dynamics 365, and then flowing off to Power BI, and we have a whole template that's created that'll take advantage of that. So if you download the template, it'll also give you all the instructions on how to get that deployed and so forth. So we think that's of huge value as well and a great starting point. The one thing too I wanted to mention, if you haven't had the opportunity of having the HoloLens headset on, if you haven't, it's really hard to describe the experience until you've had the experience, and so it's down there on the floor. They've got a ton of them running around. Our friends from PTC would be happy to show you more demos that they have. So I would encourage you to take the opportunity, if you haven't had, take the opportunity of getting a headset on and getting that experience firsthand. Yeah.
But just one of the things that's interesting, the existing Dynamics 365 Field Service mobile app, so the app that Kyle showed on his phone, runs in a 2D mode in the HoloLens. So if you want to see the same experience that Kyle had on his phone, it also runs as a 2D mode in the HoloLens. That's available in shipping today. Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't show it for the demo just because of the complexity of helping to visualize all that's happening with the demo, but yeah, it runs right on HoloLens. One of the other things too with HoloLens, which is a great experience, even before you get to 3D content and the rich apps, is just the Skype solution. So imagine the senior technician back in the office connecting with the junior technician who has the headset on and is actually seeing exactly what's happening. The senior technician can highlight, draw things as part of the experience, point to very specific things. So we're really emphasizing where that's headed. We've got work to do, but as a minimum today, you can actually go run the application on the HoloLens. So with that, we will turn it over for the remaining time. We have, it looks like, a few minutes left for questions. Yes. Yeah, so the question is, if you use the service module, meaning customer service in Dynamics 365, how does that work with the field service module? A couple of different ways. One is, for example, we ship a business process flow that allows you to go from a case to a work order, and you can set the incident type on the case. Based on the exploration of it, you can say, here's an incident type and so forth, and then you can advance that case to create a work order. It will inherit all the context of that case and create a work order. Another thing that I didn't highlight it, but with the scheduling piece, we've actually abstracted that so that basically any object inside of Dynamics 365 can be schedulable. And so you could turn on case to be a schedulable entity. And so you could actually, if you have resources that are working across work orders or across cases, or if you just want to see, if you just want to use it to schedule cases, you can do that as well. So those are probably the most likely areas of the way that they work together. Yeah, that's a good question. Yes? Yeah, the question is, what's the roadmap for the mobile application? Today, the application is based on a partner technology called Resco, so some people are aware of Resco and they understand that. And the question is it going to move to unified client? And so the answer is yes. We're making sizable investment to light up field service functionality on unified client. So with this release, we will light up all the entities on unified client for field service. We had those lit up on the previous Mocha-based mobile experience, and we'll be adding in this release time frame over the next couple of months, we'll be hardening that up and we'll be adding offline functionality as well. So now you can have the unified client experience online or offline, and we will continue to make that richer. Now, we're not cutting anybody off of the existing solution, so we'll make sure that we're at parity and we have all the features we need in the unified client version. And then at some point, we will look at trying to get all of our customers on unified client and off of the existing Resco functionality. But that's something that we'll just do over time. Yes?
How are you using the geo-tracker for your maps? Like he showed in his car how he pulled the data from the car. Are you tracking them by the phone, or are you putting the sensor in the car to track the map?
Yeah, the question is, how does geo-information, how are we using that? So out of the box, what you can do is you can turn on, it's called mobile auditing on the mobile app, and it will send in a geocode every time there's a read or a write or a record update or so forth. And so basically you can use the mobile app to get a pretty good approximation of what the current location of the technician. In addition to that, we also basically have a built-in easy way to integrate other data that comes in from other geo sources. So if, for example, you had telematic data that you wanted to flow in, you'd have to figure out what third party it is and how to bring it in. But once you got it into Dynamics, then you could map that to the technician and you could see the real-time information on the technician that way. Either way, the base solution understands that geodata, and so you could use either the out-of-the-box solution or a third-party solution and bring geodata in. And it will recognize that and know what to do with it. And you'll be able to see where they're at on the schedule board, or on the map where it goes to the schedule board. What? Yeah. So the question is around resource scheduling optimization, or RSO. And I think I captured it right, is could RSO take into account other factors like SLA and jobs that are reaching critical boundaries on SLA, for example? Is that a fair way of? Right, yeah, so if you miss an SLA, then what could RSO do with that? So taking into account SLA would be one of the extensibility, that would be something that would be enabled as we add more extensibility into the RSO piece of it. But let's just say, for example, that RSO today, which doesn't necessarily inherently understand SLAs, but if on the back end or through workflow or some other mechanism you realized that you had missed an SLA, you could adjust the priority on that one, and then if you adjust the priority on the requirement and so forth, or give that a very early, a next slot promise window or time window, RSO would go ahead and schedule it in that window. So even today, if you identified, on the background, if you decided what you wanted to do with that missed SLA, you could set it up so that RSO would take that into account and it would schedule it. All right, now we need a hard question for Ben. Has anybody got it? Go ahead. Has anybody got a hard question for Ben?
I was in a session yesterday in finance and operations, and they were able to create an application for the mobile device right in Dynamics 365. Right? Do you offer that same functionality where you can push it to certain groups within the field services?
Correct. Right. So the question is, looking at the Dynamics 365 for finance and operations, you saw some functionality there that allowed you to basically through metadata metadata define an application, a mobile application. So it's not using the same approach in customer engagement side, but basically that we have very similar functionality. One of the capabilities that's coming out with this release, it was mentioned earlier, is Unified Client. And the goal of Unified Client is to be able to, through the metadata-driven approach, define a set of experiences that work on web, tablet, phone, and it will reflow based on the form factor that it's targeting. And coupled with that is something that we refer to as app module. And so with an app module, you can basically say, okay, include this set of functionality, and if it's functionality that just already exists, you can just say, fine, just to include this subset. Like for a field service experience, we ship an app module for UC that has work order and booking and account and contact and customer asset and so forth. But you could define an experience as well and say, okay, include case and work order and something else, let's just say as an example, in the app module, and then you make that available, and then when you select that app module in the mobile experience, then you're going to get the experience that you've defined through the back-end metadata. So yeah, we're excited about that, and that's an ongoing investment area for us. I mean, overall in Dynamics 365 in customer engagement area is the unified client, so it's going to be an ongoing investment for us. But even today, you can create an app module, and you have that metadata-driven experience to create mobile experiences. Yes. Yeah, the question is, are there any plans to have, I think you were saying, like more out-of-the-box integration with Dynamics 365 for finance and operations? And the answer is yes. We leveraging the common data services capability and the integration capability, that is a roadmap area investment for. And it is an area that is on our roadmap and we're investing in. We're working right now with the integration teams and figuring out, what are the pieces that, need to be, like things like inventory and things like purchase orders for replenishment. There's a bunch of things, areas that you'd want to synchronize between those and integrate. So don't have a date for it, but that is something that we're working on. Yes. Yeah, let me, I don't know, Ken, have you guys thought about, or Ben, you guys?
The HoloLens team is doing a lot of certification right now from an environmental perspective to get it. The device itself is not hardened for areas like, and I'm working with several large oil companies right now, and it's not hardened for rig usage, if you will. there are, and I don't know what the exact, but there are some pieces of work being done that'll make that more suitable for those environments in the future.
Okay. Yeah, go for it. Oh, and then go ahead. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the question is, let's say you have you're getting IoT data that tells a little bit about what the technician is doing. Could you match that against your knowledge base to determine that, hey, there's an unsafe condition happening, and then take action on it? Is that the right way to think about it? Okay. Good. Yeah. I don't know, Ben. Yeah, I think you've thought about that a little bit. Do you want to?
Done some similar things to that. So we basically, we can actually proactively alert the technician that, so we can pop an alert on the mobile device saying, hey, you're doing dumb, please stop. We've also done it before where we actually put sensors on the mobile techs. So one of the clients we have has a worry about a tech being deceased and nobody finding out about it because the tech is at the bottom of someplace they shouldn't be. And so we actually put a wristband on the tech, and then we monitor their vitals, and if we don't find a heart rate within 15 minutes, we then route another tech to go check on the tech. Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
yeah.
So this is your reality. I'm happy to talk. I POC'd it for another customer who's in deployment right now, and that's part of their phase 2 is actually doing that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the question is, what are the current limitations of RSO? And I think you're talking about scale limitations, right? The number of resources and technicians and so forth. Yeah, so that's a good question. I'll give you a it depends answer. And the reason it depends is because it's a function, a lot of it is a function of your data and process. And so if you have, like if for example you had 100,000 work orders and you were trying to schedule 10,000 technicians all in one run across all of those work orders and so forth, probably RSO would run for a very long time. Typically though, the problem is much more partitionable, and the more partitionable that it is, the much, RSO is able to deal with that much more effectively. So if you have natural territories where you subset your demand and your capacity into natural subsets, and those things partition out nicely, then RSO has, there's been some fairly large numbers that we test on, in the tens of thousands of resources, for example, that we test on in a reasonable time frame just based on that. Another factor that can affect that is the way that you have your skills and characteristics set up. And so again, if that is something that, the way that you set that up, if it's a fairly partitionable problem so that it fairly easily says, okay, here's a subset of jobs that can be done by this technician, here's a subset that can be done by that technician, so forth, again, we see a fairly large volume of throughput for RSO. So it's hard to answer with like, okay, it's X number, but those are the things. But we do regularly test for like tens of thousands of resources and tens of thousands of requirements based on the partitioning. For 1,000, yeah, 1,000 resources, is that partitioned at all? Or okay, yeah, that.
Hey, Kyle,
yeah.
So the bigger issue I've seen from our customers is more when they don't partition resources at all. So I have one customer who wants, basically anybody can go anywhere in the United States and do anything in the United States, and they all have these same skills.
Right.
RSO sometimes returns results that are, I'm not going to say questionable, but they're not exactly right because it has too many choices to make. So partitioning of your data set down to a territory or a region is really kind of the first key in making, and it's not an RSO problem. It's it looks at the optimization, and it can make 50,000 different choices. And so you get a bit of differences in how it makes those choices than you might make as a human.
Yeah, basically agree with that. So anyway, it should be a solvable problem for you at that scale. You'll want to just look at how can you do the right partitioning. All right. Okay, any last question or questions? Okay, thank you very much, everybody.